Greetings and welcome to Dr. Fisher Road to Wellness, where we bring you a wealth of information to change you and your family tree. Today, we're going to talk about blood pressure. Huge, huge epidemic. Everybody seems to be on something for their blood pressure, when really the essence of blood pressure, I feel, is something very simple that can be under control and it doesn't have to be done with medications. Literally half of all adults in the US have high blood pressure, and many of them don't know it because, as many of you may know, they call high blood pressure a silent killer. That means that you don't experience any symptoms and your blood pressure could be high. And then next thing you know, boom, you have a heart attack or you can have a stroke, all because your blood pressure is elevated. Well, Dr. Fisher, what is an elevated blood pressure? An elevated blood pressure is anything above 130 over 80. So 130 is your systolic and 80 is your diastolic. According to, the statistics, anything that is over those numbers is considered high blood pressure. Well, what is considered high blood pressure? Anytime the blood is flowing through the arteries in the body and the pressure is high, that is what they call high blood pressure. That just means that your body is the pressure in the body and the arteries is not flowing the way they need to. They're pretty much building up. Well, what are some of the things that can cause that? When anytime there's blockage, there's artery blockage going on in the body, lack of exercise, environmental factors, such as you're working in an area where you're on like a refinery or there's a lot of pollution. Stress is huge. You remember when your mom used to say, that stress will kill you, or my grandmother used to say, that stress will kill you. I didn't know what that meant, but now I understand because anytime you're putting extra stress on the heart, then what you're doing is you're causing the pressure in the heart to build up and start to cause complications. Being overweight is another one. And then diet. A lot of times people, again, are eating a lot of high processed food. What is processed food? You walk in the stores and you walk up and down the aisles. That's processed food because what they do is they put preservatives in there to restore shelf life as long as possible. Also, eating out at restaurants. When I'm hungry, one of the things I do, and I always like to share with people, because, a lot of times we just don't think about these things. When I'm hungry, I don't go to a fast food restaurant to eat. I find the nearest grocery store, and they're everywhere. I go in there, I buy fruits, I buy vegetables, I buy seeds, such as pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. I buy avocados. Those are things I do, and plenty of water. Those are things I do to eat on until I can get to a healthy, nutritious meal versus going to the nearest drive-through restaurant. So I encourage you. Blood pressure is another very, very critical area that we're losing our loved ones in our family. So if you don't know the status, if your blood pressure is elevated, you can go into any local store, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart. They all have machines where you can go in and check your blood pressure. You should know what your pressure is doing, especially if you have a high stress job, especially if you're working on refineries, especially if you're into welding, you're dealing with a lot of environmental pollutions. You want to make sure that you're at least going and checking that, okay? Some of the symptoms that guys will experience is going to be, of course, erectile dysfunction. If you're having challenges with getting the firmness and the quality of stamina you need with your loved one, there could be headaches. I'll find that some people will have chronic headaches and they've never checked their blood pressure status. Sweating, sleeping problems. Sometimes nosebleed can cause high blood pressure. And then again, as we talk about genetics, genetics is another thing that makes you prone to high blood pressure. But remember, you don't have to have it. My mother, my father had high blood pressure, but I don't have it. And I'm well into my 40s. And what I do is I do things differently than my parents did. I eat healthier. I exercise probably about 6 days a week. I drink literally nothing but water. And I make sure that I'm getting in plenty vegetables and I'm also getting plenty of rest. I'm also making sure, I do things like yoga. I do meditation. So there are so many things you can do to keep the pressure down in the body. Some of the complications that can be involved is when your blood pressure gets too high and you allow this to go untreated, It's heart failure. Okay. You can have a stroke. And if you have a stroke, this can be life threatening because you either will end up with some type of weakness or you can end up with something even more detrimental, which is death. Okay. You also want to be mindful that if you have high blood pressure, you can end up with an amputation as well. So we want to be very, very careful when it comes to blood pressure. There are some things that I would highly recommend that you start to get on. A lot of times they've already indicated that a lot of people who do have high blood pressure, about 40% of them are deficient in CoQ10 and magnesium. And if you're taking blood pressure medicine, make sure you're taking minerals. Blood pressure medicine tends to excrete all of the minerals and some of the nutrients that the body has. They excrete it out because what's happened, you have a chemical and you have nutritional supplements that are fighting for the ability and their space in your body. And so what happens, the nutrients and all of your minerals somehow tend to be excreted. So you end up with the deficiency. And this is why you end up with cramping in the legs. This is how sometimes our elderly people end up in the hospital having to have fluid drips of, sodium and potassium, because these medications will alter your electrolyte balance. So I always want to make sure that you're taking minerals. When you go to the doctor, a lot of times they're going to want to start you on a fluid pill, but start again with lifestyle changes. Okay. That means exercising, every day. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can do 15 or 20 minutes a day of exercising outside, getting some sun. Vitamin D is so vital to your health. Just walking out in the sun, allowing that sun to just hit your skin and that oxygen, it makes a big difference with your heart. So exercising, changing the way you're eating, which is a cycle, you have to really work on changing the different things that you're eating. So I always tell people when you go to the store, you have this cycle of the foods that you pick up, that you put in the basket. Start changing that. So what that means is, say for me, and I'll use myself for example, I loved cookies. There was a time I loved Oreo cookies. They were my favorite. So I had to figure out what is a better option than the Oreo cookies. So we're going to take the Oreo cookies out the basket. I would put Newman's. Newman had some Oreo cookies that were a lot healthier than the Nabisco Oreos. So I would start eating those. Then I said, okay, what is a better option than Newman's Oreos? So then I would look at eating dates, apricots, dried fruits. Those were so much more beneficial. So what I want you to do is just consider lifestyle changes, making sure you're taking minerals. We do have some offers here that we want to suggest that you start to consider so that you can begin to control your blood pressure naturally. Again, this is Dr. Fisher, Road to Wellness. We want to help you and your family to be well naturally.